happiness and my function are one, because God has given me both. My function and my happiness are one, because God has given me both. My happiness and my function are one, because God has given me both. God gives me only happiness. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. He has given my function to me. Therefore my function must be happiness. Therefore my function must be happiness. My happiness and my function are one, because God has given me both. My happiness and my function are one, because God has given me both. My happiness and my function are one, because God has given me both. Well, let's take a look at our lesson and see what we have to learn today. I think it's our longest lesson this year so far. Just a little over 2 pages. My happiness and my function are one. And sometimes these longer lessons can be a little intimidating, but he just has a lot to say. And I just want to encourage you to lean on these recordings. I find I'm doing them every day, and I'll probably keep doing them for a long time. So just just say, okay, at least I can sit down and push play. And let me help you through, okay? My happiness and my function are one. You've surely noticed an emphasis throughout our recent lessons on the connection between fulfilling your function and achieving happiness. This is because you do not really see the connection. Yet there is more than just a connection between them. They are the same. Their forms are different, your function and your happiness. Their forms are different, but their content is completely one. The ego does constant battle with the Holy Spirit on the fundamental question of what your function is. So does it do constant battle with the Holy Spirit about what your happiness is. It is not a two-way battle. The ego attacks and the Holy Spirit does not respond. He knows what your function is. He knows that it is your happiness. Today we will try to go past this wholly meaningless battle and arrive at the truth about your function. We will not engage in senseless arguments about what it is. We will not become hopelessly involved in defining happiness and determining the means for achieving it. We will not indulge the ego by listening to its attacks on truth. We will merely be glad that we can find out what truth is. Our longer practice period today has as its purpose your acceptance of the fact that not only is there a very real connection between the function God gave you and your happiness, but that they are actually identical. In other words, God gave you a function. What is it? To be happy. I mean, come on, how difficult. There's no sacrifice in God's requirements, if you even want to call it a requirement. His longing, his wish, his hope, your function is to be happy. Our longer practice period today has as its purpose your acceptance of the fact that not only is there a very real connection between the function God gave you and your happiness, but that they are actually identical. God gives you only happiness. Therefore, the function He gave you must be happiness, even if it appears to be different. Today's exercises are an attempt to go beyond these differences in appearance and recognize a common content where it exists in truth. Begin the 10 to 15 minute practice period by reviewing these thoughts. So he wants us to take one time for 10 to 15 minutes a day. And I would encourage you to do that when you first get up in the morning. Just let that be the time to do it, or when you go to bed, or preferably both. He hadn't required that at this point. But take time right before you go to bed or before you go to bed. Whenever you feel the most alert at this point, let it be the time you take your 10 to 15 minutes. And of course, it could be during the day. You maybe have a good time during the day. But I'm just saying, I like to get it done first thing in the morning so I know it's done. I did it. Then I can focus on my shorter applications throughout the day. Okay, begin the 10 to 15 minute practice period by reviewing these thoughts. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. Try to see the logic in this sequence, even if you do not accept the conclusion. The conclusion, therefore my function must be happiness, is based on the idea my happiness and my function are one. God gives me only happiness. Okay, excuse me. Let's look at the progression. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. He created you, so he must have given your function to you. Therefore, my function must be happiness. Okay, now let's look what he has to say about this. It is only if the first two thoughts are wrong that the conclusion could be false. Let us then think about the premises for a while as we are practicing. The first premise is that God gives you only happiness. This could be false, of course, but in order to be false, it is necessary to define God as something he is not. Love. Love cannot give evil. And what is not happiness is evil. God cannot give what he does not have, and he cannot have what he is not. Unless God gives you only happiness, he must be evil. And it is this definition of him you are believing if you do not accept the first premise. Wow, we're learning a pretty powerful premise then, that God gives me only happiness. The second premise is that God has given you your function. We have seen that there are only two parts of your mind. One is ruled by the ego and is made up of illusions. The other is the home of the Holy Spirit where truth abides. There are no other guides but these to choose between, and no other outcomes possible as a result of your choice, but the fear that the ego always engenders and the love that the Holy Spirit always offers to replace it. Thus, it must be that your function is established by God through his voice, or is made by the ego, which you have made to replace him. Which is true? Unless God gave your function to you, it must be the gift of the ego. Does the ego really have gifts to give, being itself an illusion and offering only the illusion of gifts? Think about this during the longer practice period today. Think also about the many forms the illusion of your function has taken in your mind, and the many ways in which you tried to find salvation under the ego's guidance. Did you find it? Were you happy? Did they bring you peace? We need great honesty today. Remember the outcomes fairly, and consider also whether it was ever reasonable to expect happiness from anything the ego ever proposed. Yet the ego is the only alternative to the Holy Spirit's voice. You will listen to madness or hear the truth. You will listen to madness or hear the truth. Try to make this choice as you think about the premises on which our conclusion rests. We can share in this conclusion, but in no other, for God himself shares it with us. Today's idea is another giant stride in the perception of the same as the same and the different as different. On one side stands all illusions. All truth stands on the other. Let us try today to realize that only truth is true. In the shorter practice periods, which would be most helpful today if undertaken twice an hour, this form of the application is suggested. My happiness and my function are one, because God has given me both. It will not take more than a minute, and probably less, to repeat these words slowly and to think about them a little while as you say them. So all he's saying is take a minute or two if you can, or even less, and say, my happiness and my function are one, because God has given me both. And he says, say that to yourself about every half hour today. In our longer practice period, he started off by saying, God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me, therefore my function must be happiness. And then let that kind of look at the sequence, the logic of it, and see how it progresses to the conclusion, therefore my function must be happiness. If God gives me only happiness, and He has given my function to me, therefore my function must be happiness. Bathe in that. He says, think about this. Thus, in paragraph 8, thus it must be that your function is established by God through His voice, or is made by the ego which you have made to replace Him, which is true. Unless God gave your function to you, it must be the gift of the ego. Does the ego really have gifts to give, being itself an illusion and offering only the illusion of gifts? Think about this during the longer practice period today. Think also about the many forms the illusions of your function has taken in your mind, and the many ways in which you tried to find salvation under the ego's guidance. Tried to find happiness under the ego's guidance. That'd be like what Jesus said when He said, don't let the blind lead the blind, otherwise they'll both fall in a ditch. Well, He's referring there to the ego and to those that are following the dictates of guilt and separation and fear rather than unity and love. Did you find it? He said, think also about the many forms the illusion of your function has taken in your mind, and the many ways in which you tried to find salvation under the ego's guidance. Did you find it? Were you happy? Did they bring you peace? We need great honesty today. Remember the outcomes fairly, and consider also whether it was ever reasonable to expect happiness from anything the ego ever proposed. Yet the ego is the only alternative to the Holy Spirit's voice. You will listen to madness, or you will hear the truth. Well, let's hear the truth today in our longer and shorter practice periods. Okay, let's go back and look in our text reading. And we're ready in chapter 8, the Journey Back, section Roman numeral 5, the undivided will of the Sonship. Can you be separated from your identification and be at peace? Dissociation is not a solution, it is a delusion. The delusional believe that truth will assail them, and they do not recognize it because they prefer the delusion. Oh my. Judging truth as something they do not want, they perceive their illusions, which block knowledge. Help them by offering them your unified mind on their behalf, as I am offering you mine on behalf of yours. Catch that again. Help them. Those that are following the ego and lost in their complexities of all their illusions, looking for happiness in all the wrong places. Help them by offering them your unified mind on their behalf, as I am offering you mine on behalf of yours. Alone we can do nothing, but together our minds fuse into something whose power is far beyond the power of its separate parts. By not being separate, the mind of God is established in ours and as ours. By not being separate, the mind of God is established in ours and as ours. This mind is invincible because it is undivided. So see yourself in your brother, but see the love in them. See the appeal for help rather than what you might call an attack upon yourself. Paragraph 2. The undivided will of the Sonship is the perfect Creator, being wholly in the likeness of God, whose will it is. You cannot be exempt from it if you are to understand what it is and what you are. Again on that, the undivided will of the Sonship is the perfect Creator, being wholly in the likeness of God, whose will it is. See that undivided will of the Sonship in your brothers and sisters, maybe even before they see it in this dimension or this kingdom or this level of existence. You cannot be exempt from the one will of the undivided will of the Sonship. You cannot be exempt from it if you are to understand what it is and what you are. By the belief that your will is separate from mine, you are exempting yourself from the will of God, which is yourself. Yet to heal is still to make whole. Therefore, to heal is to unite with those who are like you, because perceiving this likeness is to recognize the Father. If your perfection is in Him and only in Him, how can you know it without recognizing Him? The recognition of God is the recognition of yourself. There is no separation of God and His creation. You will realize this when you understand that there is no separation between your will and mine. Let the love of God shine upon you by your acceptance of me. My reality is yours and His. By joining your mind with mine, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one. 3. God's oneness and ours are not separate, because His oneness encompasses ours. To join with me is to restore His power to you, because we are sharing it. I offer you only the recognition of His power in you, but in that lies all truth. As we unite with Him. Glory be to the union of God and His holy sons. All glory lies in them because they are united. The miracles we do bear witness to the will of the Father for His Son, and to our joy in uniting with His will for us. Let's read that sentence again. All glory lies in them because they are united. The miracles we do bear witness to the will of the Father for His Son, and to our joy in uniting with His will for us. 4. When you unite with me, you are uniting without the ego, because I have renounced the ego in myself, and therefore cannot unite with yours. Our union is therefore the way to renounce the ego in you. The truth in both of us is beyond the ego. Our success in transcending the ego is guaranteed by God, and I share this confidence for both of us and all of us. I bring God's peace back to all His children because I received it of Him for us all. Nothing can prevail against our united wills because nothing can prevail against God's. Nothing can prevail against God's will. And when we unite our will with our brothers, in this particular case with Jesus, who we're supposed to be seeing in everyone, the Christ, we're uniting with God, and we're leaving our egos. We're leaving that skeptical part of ourselves that wonders why in the world we're loving our neighbor as ourselves, why we're giving all to all. Okay, paragraph 5. Would you know the will of God for you? Would you know the will of God for you? Ask it of me who knows it of you, and you will find it. I will deny you nothing, as God denies me nothing. Whenever fear intrudes anywhere along the road to peace, it is because the ego has attempted to join the journey with us and cannot do so. So be alert to those feelings of fear, that's the ego trying to join up, which he can't do. Sensing defeat and angered by it, the ego regards itself as rejected and becomes retaliative. You are invulnerable to its retaliation because I am with you. On this journey, you have chosen me as your companion instead of the ego. Do not attempt to hold on to both, or you will try to go in different directions and will lose your way. Let go of the ego. It only brings you unhappiness. And he's given you a good way to tell if it's the ego, because you'll feel those fear thoughts. That's a clear sign that you're not listening to the voice for happiness, your function, the one that God gave you. God gives me only happiness. He's given my function to me. Therefore, my function must be happiness. Let that be your guide. When you're not feeling happiness, know that you're listening to the voice of the ego and let it go. Don't take any longer than what you absolutely feel like you have to take in order to say, I don't need that. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to listen to the voice for Christ, the voice from God, the Holy Spirit. Okay, last paragraph, 6. The ego's way is not mine, but it is also not yours. The Holy Spirit has one direction for all minds, and the one He taught me is yours. Let us not lose sight of His direction through illusions, for only illusions of another direction can obscure the one for which God's voice speaks in all of us. Never accord the ego the power to interfere with the journey. It has none, because the journey is the way to what is true. Leave all illusions behind and reach beyond all attempts of the ego to hold you back. Reach beyond all attempts of fear to hold you back. I go before you because I am beyond the ego. Reach therefore for my hand because you want to transcend the ego. My strength will never be wanting, and if you choose to share it, you will do so. I give it willingly and gladly because I need you as much as you need me. Wow, isn't that nice to know that we're needed and that we need our brothers and sisters as much as they need us, even if they don't see it yet. We may just barely be seeing it ourselves. But let's go back, step on in faith and join up with our teacher Jesus and say, okay, we can do this. We can do this. And I use the word Jesus a lot because He means a lot to me. That word helps me. And it may not help everybody. He doesn't even use the word in the Course of Miracles. There's a dog chasing a rabbit. But to me, it's obvious that who the author of this book is, the Carpenter of Galilee. Okay, let's take a look. How much time? We're looking good on time. Well, we got to keep moving. Ramadan continues today for your Islamic foes. Allah, if I'm pronouncing it right, the Baha'i holiday, loftiness, continues. Lent for both the Great Lent of the Orthodox and regular Lent of the Catholic and Christian is going on. World Day of Prayer. World Day of Prayer, the ladder of prayer. Ask God for help. Be Heard Day. You can know that God hears you. Alexander Graham Bell Day. Mr. Watson, come here. That was back in 1876. He got his patent today. 3 days later, he said, Mr. Watson, come here. Dress in Blue Day. Flapjack Day. You pancake maker day. Might be a good day to make pancake. Flapjacks. Employee Appreciation. I used to make pancakes, flip them over, and I'd throw them to the kids sitting at the table. If they'd hit the floor, that dog got them. They'd have their plates up ready to catch them, though. Anyway, make it fun, okay? Employee Appreciation Day and Salesperson Day. Plant Power Day. And of course, we'll talk about a plant. We'll talk about the Eversweet strawberry, the Fragaria ananasa out of Gurney's here in just a moment. I ordered some yesterday from Gurney's, and I've got idea that when I ordered a bunch of mushrooms, which I want to talk about, the inoculating stumps with mushrooms spawn, and then planting strawberries around them out in the woods. I thought that sounds like a good idea. Everbearing. So, Shabbat across America, your Jewish contribution, and Islamic to cease work on the Sabbath, Friday night. A lot of Christian organizations do that too. Sock Monkey Day. I always talk about the sock monster that would take one sock, but making a little toy out of the socks. And World Math Day. And I said we were going to talk about the Eversweet strawberry. Eversweet out of Gurney's tolerates temperatures well above 100 degrees Fahrenheit with no loss of fruit quality. Large, deep red berries are extremely sweet and flavorful, self-pollinating zones 5 through 8. So it's an everbearing, and sounds like it makes even through the hot part of the summer, which that sounds good. And our word for peace, let's take it from the Mandarin people of China, and it's, if I'm pronouncing it right, it's Hépíng. Hépíng be with you. Okay, learn about the logic and think about it and be honest with yourself about listening to the voice for God instead of the voice for the ego. I'll get you started with one of your practice periods, or with a practice period with my song right now. Oh, let's make sure I get this the way I practiced it last night. Actually, I think I know where it starts at. My happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. My happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. God gives me only happiness. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. He has given my function to me. Therefore my function must be happiness. Therefore my function must be happiness. My happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. My happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. Say that throughout the day. Every half hour, tell yourself this. My happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. My happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. God gives me only happiness. God gives me only happiness. He has given my function to me. He has given my function to me. Therefore my function must be happiness. Therefore my function must be happiness. My happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. Oh, my happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. Tell yourself that throughout the day. My happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. Might be a great time to turn off the recording now and go into the silence and have your 10 or 15 minute practice period. But throughout the day, tell yourself, my happiness and my function are one because God has given me both. Hépíng.